So why do we like this version of no-till compared to using leaves, wood chips, straw, those kind of things on top of the soil? Well, it has a lot to do with... What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Thursday, February 8th here in South Georgia, and on our last video I showed you how we had just gotten a load of this good stuff here behind me. So in today's video we're going to talk about what this actually is, our plans for it, where we're going to put all this stuff, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my version of no-till gardening. So this compost, if you want to call it that, is made from wood chips that were just piled up by a sawmill and allowed to naturally decompose. I think the guy told me this stuff here is around 15 years old. They do run it through a screener to get any chunks out of it. You can see some tiny little pieces of wood chips in there, but it's pretty fine stuff, as you can see there. So this is the same stuff we used to fill our raised beds back when we put this raised bed plot together in 2022. I also, about a year or so ago, added a thin layer of it to this plot here where we have onions now, and you can tell because you can see a few of those little chips still sticking around down there. And I've also used it around the base of some of my fig trees. Now, I've never done a soil test on this stuff. I don't really know the nutrient content of it, but just from using it, it seems pretty good. When we first got a load of this stuff, we just dumped it in the yard back there, and I could immediately tell the grass started greening up where we dumped this stuff. So I said, it must be pretty good stuff. Worked really well for us in the raised beds, worked well for us around the fig trees, and in that onion plot I showed you earlier. So now, I don't know how much nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium is actually in it, but from what I can tell so far, it's pretty good stuff. And before we go any further, because I know we'll have a lot of people messaging us asking where they can get a load of it, this stuff is not easy to get. The guy I get it from is not in the compost business, he's in the timber business. He stays pretty busy, and so when I tell him I want a load, it might be 2 weeks before I get it. It might be a month or so before I get it. And so I just kind of tell him, bring me a load when he can. I can find somewhere to put it and we'll spread it around, you know, as we need it. So it's not like I can just call him up and get a load tomorrow. That's why I don't tell a whole lot of people about it. And so the reason I had this load dumped right here is because the majority of this is going to get spread on top of this particular no-till plot. So I thought it'd be a great time to expound on our version of no-till. There's a lot of different versions of no-till out there, a lot of different ways to do it. And as we saw on some of the comments from last week's video, some people just despise no-till altogether. But anyways, my version of no-till involves just layering compost on top of the soil. And I didn't invent this, lots of other people do this as well. So instead of using things like leaves or wood chips or hay or straw, we just put compost on top of the soil. So one of the things that led me to try this several years ago was the fact that I noticed that when I tilled compost into our sandy soil, it would burn up pretty fast. So after a year of tilling it in the soil, it was almost like it was never there in the first place. The soil looked the same as it did before we added the compost. Now, I'm not really sure of the chemical processes or the soil geology process going on there that causes that to happen, but it was something I noticed over and over again. We'd put compost down, we'd till it in, and then we just keep having to add more and more and more because it was burning up in our native sandy soils. So what we noticed was that if we just layer the compost on top of the soil, it sticks around for a lot longer. It's been about 3 years since we added this cotton gin compost to this plot and that plot right there, and you can see there's still plenty of it there. Now, that's not to say there aren't some benefits to incorporating compost into your native soil. If you've got hard clay soils, soils that get just baked and hard and impossible to work, you could probably benefit from incorporating some compost into the soil. But our native soils here are pretty easy to work, and so we didn't really need to incorporate them for that purpose. We were more incorporating them just to add organic matter to hold nutrients. But what we found was we can get more bang for our buck with the compost if we put it on top instead of mixing it in. So why do we like this version of no-till compared to using leaves, wood chips, straw, those kind of things on top of the soil? Well, it has a lot to do with what we plant, how we plant, and how often we replant. So as we demonstrated on that last video, all the time, basically year-round, we're taking out one vegetable, cleaning up that area, and planting something else, oftentimes with a different row spacing. And because we need drip irrigation down here in the deep south, when we do that turnover, it means we got to pull up our drip tape to clean up that area, or maybe move the drip tape for a different row spacing and then put it back down. And that's kind of hard to do or time consuming to do if you have leaves, wood chips, or straw on top of the soil. But if you just got compost on top of the soil, it's really, really easy. Another reason we like this version of no-till is because we do a decent amount of direct seeding. I couldn't imagine planting 9 double rows of corn into a leaf mulch layer or a wood chip mulch layer or hay mulch layer. So this way it makes direct seeding a lot easier. And then we've got our cover crops that we like to do because we can feed our chickens really easily and get free fertilizer in return. Probably difficult to plant a cover crop into a leaf mulch layer or a wood chip mulch layer, but we can get it to germinate pretty good just in this compost layer. So that's why we like this version of no-till. That's not to say the other versions of no-till are bad. Different things work for different folks, but for us, this is the way to go. And we've definitely seen the benefits of it over the last 3 years. It wasn't instant. In the first year, was really no different than some of our regularly cultivated plots. But over the last year or so, man, we have seen some awesome growth in these plots. Just amazing how plants thrive when we've got that compost layer on top and we have minimal disturbance below it. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier that you may be wondering is why we went with this stuff instead of just using more cotton gin compost. So one of the main reasons is just availability and affordability. The guy I get the wood chip stuff from is right down the road. The cotton gin stuff, that's about an hour away. So a lot closer and a lot less paying for transport with the wood chip stuff. Another reason though why I like this stuff here a little better than the cotton gin stuff has to do with moisture retention. So this cotton gin compost is really good stuff, but it's really, really fine and doesn't hold moisture very well. That means I have a tough time sometimes getting seeds to germinate in this stuff. I really have to water the mess out of them to get them up and going. But this wood chip stuff here actually holds moisture pretty well. We've seen that in our raised beds and some other places we've used it. You can tell just by, I can kind of squeeze it and it will stay together, whereas that cotton gin stuff won't. So now let's talk about where we're going to put all this. So we don't necessarily need to use this entire load just on this one no-till plot. I put it here because it would be easy to get to, and I'm planting tomatoes here in the spring. I knew I've got some time before that happens. That's why we dumped it here. We've already got a decent compost layer in place, so we don't need to put on a 3 or 4 inch compost layer. Just a couple inches will do. That means we should have some left over. And knowing that, I think I'm going to put some of it right here where we're hopefully going to be planting taters within the next week. Because our taters did awesome with this stuff in the raised beds last year, so I think they'll do awesome with it in the in-ground plot as well. So I've got a little bit of work to do here. Got to pull up the rest of those ochre stumps. Got some weeds I need to get out of there. I just don't want to put compost on top of those weeds because they're probably going to grow right through it. So a little bit of cleanup to do. Then we'll get the wheelbarrow, start dumping some loads of that stuff on the plot here, and I'll give you an update about halfway through. All right, so about 30 minutes, couple drops of sweat, and 10 wheelbarrow loads later, we're in the short rows now. All we got to do is level out these piles with the rake. And there we go, we're ready to plant taters. Now I only put this stuff about 1 inch or 2 inches thick. Not real thick because we already had plenty of compost there. I'm just trying to improve the moisture retention a little bit. But if you're doing this for the first time, you're probably gonna have to put it down pretty thick, 4 or 5 inches of compost like we did when we set up these plots. But as time goes on, you don't really have to add a whole lot just to kind of top it off. Now some of this will get mixed in with that older cotton gin compost as we make a furrow to plant taters, heel taters, and harvest taters, but that'll be okay. So we got our raised beds ready for taters a few videos ago. Now we have our in-ground spot ready for taters. The only problem is we're not going to be able to plant taters on Valentine's Day like I normally do. And Brooklyn is really upset about it. I unfortunately have a speaking engagement that day. So maybe we can get them planted before Valentine's Day. Maybe we have to wait until after Valentine's Day. Won't really matter a whole lot. 4 or 5 days, even a couple weeks won't matter, but we'll get them planted as soon as we can. So I hope you enjoyed the video today, and let me know in the comments below if you've ever tried this version of no-till or what your version of no-till is. As always, you can find a lot of the products we use around here on our website at lazydogfarm.com. And if you missed that video we did last week talking about cultivation versus no-till, which is actually faster and easier in the beginning, you can watch that right here. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.